Okay, so I think we will begin. I want to welcome our esteemed panel for this Asia Pacific Evaluation Landscape webinar series. This is organized by the Asia Pacific Evaluation Association. This is our second webinar of the series. This series follows the institutionalization of evaluation in Asia Pacific book, which explores 11 countries and 2 multilateral agencies, offering in-depth insights and nuanced finding beyond the NEPS survey. So this time we have country presentations from Bangladesh, China, and the Philippines. And we will have an opening of the webinar, and then we will move to country presentations. We will have a discussion of the country presentation and a Q&A at the end, where I will then take some questions, hopefully both from the chat box, and we will bring some of you who will put their hands up to speak. I will talk about the rules, how and what questions we will take and how that will work when we get to them. And I also want to welcome all our participants to this second webinar. For the opening remarks, I will hand it to Honorable Ramesh, Executive Committee member for the Parliamentarians Forum of Evaluation, and member of our National Evaluation Policies and Systems group in APIA. Honorable Ramesh, mic is yours for the opening remarks.
Thank you, Mohit. Dear participants, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on your geographical locations. First of all, I would like to welcome you all once again to this webinar on NEPS evaluation policies, National Evaluation Policies and Systems, NEPS. This is the second webinar of its kind, following our first session 2 weeks ago, where we discussed the evaluation landscapes of Nepal and Mongolia. If some of you missed it and are still interested, you can access a copy of the Zoom recording on the official YouTube channel of APIA. Today, we will be discussing the national evaluation policies and systems, NEPS of Bangladesh, China, and the Philippines. We are fortunate to have highly experienced speakers representing these countries. The moderator of the program will introduce them shortly. Our moderator for today is Mr. Mohib Iqbal. You know that he is a member of the NEPS team of Asia Pacific Regional Evaluation Strategy, and our discussant is Professor Dr. Wolfgang Meyer, Professor of Sociology at Saarland University, Germany. The closing remarks will be given by Ms. Sivin Geral Amgelan from Mongolia. She's also a member of NEPS team of APRES. Let me mention the partners who made this webinar possible. The partners are APIA, Center for Evaluation at the University of Sri Jayawardhanapura, Sri Lanka, Center for Evaluation at Saarland University, Germany, and the Asia Pacific Communication Hub. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite you all to actively participate in this webinar. I hope you will enjoy it. Thank you. Over to you, Mohit.
Thank you, Honorable Ramesh. We will now move to our speakers. We have 3 speakers. We have Dr. Sharif in As-Saber. He is he's a professor in Sultan Qaboos University in Oman, and he's Vice President UN PRME in the Middle East chapter. I'm thinking to introduce the speakers one by one as I get to. We had another presenter from Bangladesh. We had a last-minute apology from them. They had to deal with something urgent. He's okay and everything is okay, but he just could not make it to our webinar today. I will pass the mic to Dr. Sharif, and then as we go, I will be introducing each of our speakers when we get to the country presentation.
Thank you very much. I'm waiting for the slides to be shown.
I will stop sharing so they can, Randika can share.
Can you see the slides, Mohit?
Yes, I can
Yep.
see the slides.
Okay, you can proceed.
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very nice and loud. Very good.
Thank you so much. And good afternoon from Muscat, Oman. At the moment, it is around 1:07 in the afternoon, and I understand it is around 2:37 in India. And whoever and from wherever you are from, good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. So it is an honor to be able to present here today on evaluation in Bangladesh. As you know that very recently Bangladesh has actually gone through a real turmoil. Situation is settling down there, and we hope that with everything, evaluation process in Bangladesh will be further streamlined with the change that is that we can actually see at the moment happening. Next slide, please. Yep. So Bangladesh is a country. It is more than 50 years old now. However, given the maturity as a nation, it has also matured its evaluation system across the board. It is crucial for enhancing transparency, accountability, and effectiveness in Bangladesh from a governance perspective, of course, like other countries. So this particular presentation will try to give you some ideas about the institutionalization of evaluation in Bangladesh. And at the same time, we'll try, next slide, please. Thank you. So if you just go towards the historical side of it, and since its independence in 1971, the country has been striving to create a scenario where evaluation could be a part of its development and planning processes. So initial focus of evaluation in those days, in the 70s and in the 80s, those were primarily driven by IDAs, international development agencies, and their agendas, because a lot of donation and all sorts of aids were actually pouring into Bangladesh at that time. So the project-based evaluation was the primary concern during those years. Now, there was a shift, of course, since 1990s, where the evaluation became more important, and the government took more proactive role in, institutionalizing evaluation. And in order to do that, there were certain committees as well as ministries and departments were created to enhance the process. Next slide, please. So the key institution in this regard, which is a government department or division, which is known as Implementation, Monitoring, and Evaluation Division within the country. So that actually works under the Ministry of Planning, and this is a central tool for the government to continue its evaluation process. And of course, there are other agencies that are equally important. And the top organization or institution in Bangladesh that actually monitors all sorts of evaluation is known as the National Economic Council. And they have an executive committee of National Economic Council, which is also known as ECNAC, which is primarily responsible to supervise everything with respect to evaluation and monitoring across all departments, ministries in the country. So yeah, and of course we are talking about the line ministries, where each of those ministries has their own project evaluation committees headed by the secretaries of individual committees, individual ministries. Next slide, please. Now, we have a few things there. We talk about, annual development programs. So when we look at the evaluation from a Bangladesh country context, it was primarily driven by ADP because most of the budgets actually goes through annual development program. And then government has a need to look at the situation there, whether the money is spent properly and proper guidance is actually maintained, the money is utilized without being wasted by any means. Now, when we look at the National Evaluation Policy, which is not a very old one, and that also actually had a set of guidelines that talks about how to actually continue doing it and how to strengthen the evaluation policy and programs within the country's context. Now, of course, there are legislation, there are various policies, there are various programs, and also on. So yeah, if you just go to the next slide, then we will see that what are the major issues there and what are the key policies and programs. So first, of course, as I had just mentioned about annual development program, which is an ongoing issue. It is done annually. And within that particular program, every year they need to actually mandate the evaluation of all development programs or projects within that program. So this is the key area where evaluation is seriously looked at by the government and other agencies. And of course, there is a national evaluation policy, which came into force in 2015, which is providing some guidelines in terms of how to conduct evaluation and so on. Now, there were some other acts and policies which are actually aiding the total evaluation process in Bangladesh, such as Public Procurement Act, and National Education Policy and Health Policy. Now, when we look, why are we are highlighting health policy and national education policy? Because in recent years, the government actually has put a lot of emphasis on these two areas. And if you just think about the child mortality, if you think about women's health, if you think about population control, and all these things actually came under the health policy. And the drug policy that Bangladesh had a few years ago, that was actually revolutionized the entire medical area or health area within the country, where they actually relying more on generic medicine and so on. And maintaining and monitoring that policy is a very important one for the government as well as for the Ministry of Health. Education definitely is another one, which, like other countries, we give a lot of emphasis on education. and it requires evaluation of academic programs and initiatives. Next slide, please. Now, if you just look at the evaluation from a practice perspective, I think it is an ongoing process, and it goes that, okay, first you plan it, implement it, evaluate it, and based on the feedback, you just go back and continue the same process. Now, when we look at the implementation of the evaluation, we do have a regular evaluation conducted for major development projects, as I mentioned earlier about ADP, for example. And we use both quantitative and qualitative methods to do that. Now, there are various areas, as I have just mentioned, about the health sector, and of course in the education sector. And these are the areas where we are doing probably more works than other areas. But recently, areas such as infrastructure, roads and highways, these are the areas. There is communication area has become very dominant from Bangladesh context, because some bridges, very big bridges, bridge projects, roads projects, metro rail, all sorts of projects have recently been implemented. That has actually shifted the focus to a certain extent from health education to infrastructure development. And I think evaluation is playing a role as a whole. Next slide, please. Now, if you just look at these things, I don't really want to go through this list at the moment. Just quickly give you some ideas. As I mentioned earlier, the maternal health programs in Bangladesh. Bangladesh has created a lot of records in terms of, child mortality. It is very low now, and of course, antenatal care and all sorts of areas. And Bangladesh has made a real progress in that particular area. Education sector, girls' education, women's education, and that is also a very, very important one. And Bangladesh claims that it has achieved self-sufficiency in agriculture to a certain extent, because we hardly actually need to import staple food like rice and so on. So, but a consistent and constant evaluation process is required to maintain it and maintain the standard and reach the ultimate objective of, reaching some sort of self-sufficiency in those areas and improve the development and the overall condition within the country. Next slide, please. There are, of course, challenges. First one definitely is limited resources and the capacity within the government agencies. And the major problem, however, is the resistance to evaluation from political entities. And together with that, we must also mention one thing, that it is not just politics. So to a certain extent, the corruption or alleged corruption, whatever we call it, and all sorts of pressure coming from various quarters to undermine evaluation and monitoring. And that has been going on for quite some time. And we hope that the situation would change with the change of guards in Bangladesh at the moment. And of course, there are cultural and social factors. The hierarchical nature of decision-making process is still there, unfortunately. And these are challenging to a certain extent, because sometimes the barricades are created so that the proper evaluation could not be conducted. But we hope that there will be a change in this particular regard. Next, please. Next slide, please. Now, of course, we do believe in global partnership. The Bangladesh has been actually working along with major organizations, international organizations such as World Bank, Asian Development Bank, UNICEF, and so on. If we just look at the international development agencies as a whole, outside that, and they are also providing a lot of support to the evaluation process in Bangladesh, especially in terms of capacity building. That means how to do it, what is the best way of doing it, all sorts of things are coming from them. So creating a benchmark or following a benchmark, they are all done by primarily, we do it through international support and so on. Next, please. Now, of course, Bangladesh lags behind many countries, especially countries within the Asia-Pacific region, South Korea, Japan, and so on. We know that similar sort of challenges are faced in other South Asian countries, including Nepal and India. We do try to follow the best practices, and adoption of mixed method approach in evaluation is maintained in Bangladesh, which is quite successful. Establishing independent evaluation offices, we are creating some, but they are not very strong now. The private sector. There are some organizations which have started operating, but still it is the government's domain in terms of evaluation. Although with respect to training, providing training and so on, private organizations, international organizations, they're coming forward and providing some good training on evaluation. And next, please. So evaluation definitely has informed major policy decisions, such as the health policy, which was done in 2000, which was promulgated in 2011, and education policy in 2010, another example. So, and these policies were based on comprehensive evaluation of the health and education sector. So, and again, after the policy came into being, the current regime and has been actually continuing the evaluation process. That what is happening now, how could that be improved? So monitoring and evaluation is an ongoing process across these two sectors in particular. Next slide, please. NGOs and civil society organizations are very
Dr. Sharif,
important.
I just want to quickly jump in and say you have 2 more minutes.
Sure. It will be done within the next 2 minutes, hopefully. Yep. Just give me a second. Yes, they are doing quite a good job in terms of providing some support to the community-driven evaluation, both at the local and central level within the country. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, that yes, some training and certification courses are provided by both at government and the private level. Next slide, please. So here, I think one very important part here I need to mention that when we look at the evaluation process, the government is seriously considering and maintaining some sort of link with the evaluation process and SDGs, that is Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And at the same time, we are looking at technology-based issues, including AI. And of course, we are looking at the various organizations, those who actually could contribute to better evaluation process within the country. In terms of recommendation, we think that there should be the legal process should be strengthened in terms of evaluation, and there should be better collaboration, which is consistent with SDG 17, that we should have collaboration both locally and internationally. Next, please. Yep, so this is, in conclusion, we can say that institutionalization is important, evaluation within the evaluation the process, and continuous efforts to improve the current evaluation process is important as well. And of course, we should encourage policymakers to support the growth of evaluation practices for better governance. Bangladesh definitely is not an exception. Next slide, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sharif. We will move directly to our next presenter, Professor Wingzuan Yu. He's Professor and Dean of School of Public Affairs in Xiamen University in China.
Oh, no. Xiamen University, sorry about that. Sorry for interrupting you.
Okay. Yeah. That's very good. Yeah, thank you for that correction. Can someone please share?
No, let me share mine because I made a bit update.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
I made a little bit update. I can also control my my slides. So everybody, could you see my slide? Okay, let me could you see my slide?
Yes,
Yes,
I can
we
see it
can
now.
see you.
You might need to put it on the slideshow. So
Yeah, sure.
Please, thank you.
Okay. My screen is a little bit small, so let me put it on the slide mode. Okay. Supposed to be
Great.
okay. Is that okay?
Very good. Yeah.
Okay.
Continue. Thank you.
Let me go ahead. First, I really would like to express my sincere thanks for all of you to organize this webinar, and it's also a good opportunity for me to introduce the government evaluation activities in China. Actually, recently, I joined our book, and actually, my presentation is based on the book chapter I wrote, because I'm in the field of public administration. So I'm talking about evaluation in China from the public administration scholars' point of view. So first, I actually the structure of my sharing actually is like this. And first, I will quickly talk about a little bit about the concept and the evolution of government evaluation activities in China. And I will, in order to understand China is very complicated. China is not only a big country, the Chinese government structure, political and administrative structures are very complicated for outsiders. So I think I need to briefly introduce you guys the structure. And also I will talk about the evaluation activities and social impact in China. And if I have time, I will talk about a little bit about the challenges and the professional systems of government evaluation in China. Before my talk, and I want to highlight that different countries with really different culture, really different system, and actually we have a huge difference. So that's why I really appreciate this opportunity to share with our international community to facilitate your guys' understanding for the China's activities. First, I want to say something about the concept of the government evaluation activities. Evaluation actually in Chinese, 评估 is a very elusive concept. And actually, you can trace it back. You can China has a long history of civilization. Evaluation activities actually can be traced back to the Shang Dynasty in China, actually more than 3,000 years ago. And in China, the evaluation, the concept 评估 actually is very elusive, as I mentioned, and at least it has a following meanings. When we talk about 评估, when we talk about evaluation in China, and we talk about measurement, we talk about criticize. Not only it is a noun, it is only a verb. When we talk about 评估, we talk about estimate. We also talk about feedback. We talk about information use. It's a very complicated and elusive concept. That's why when I got the mission, when I got the responsibility for write up a book chapter, the first thing I want to highlight is the connotations, is the definition of the 评估. So when we talk about the evaluation activity in China, basically I'm talking about government evaluation activities in modern China, actually for the country regime, the PRC, People's Republic of China, and it was established in 1949. So the following evaluation activities I'm talking about actually happened after 1949, and for this new regime is a revolutionary regime. It is very different from the previous regime, and so when I talk about the government activity, evaluation activities, particularly I'm talking about the activities after 1978, the late 1970s. We actually after China's reform and open up policy, which is very famous, and after the so-called reform and open up policy, China actually step on a new development path. So I'm going to talk about something after the late 1970s. So here I call it as so-called from ancient time to pre-reform era. And after the reform and open up policy in the 1978, the first thing Chinese government actually was doing and did for evaluation activities, actually basically is so-called cadre appraisal system for evaluating the performance of individual government officials. In China, we call them, literally, we translate it as a cadre, right? So actually in the 1979, right after the policy, the Chinese government actually issued and implemented a government decree, opinions on the implementation of the cadre appraisal system in 1979. They really would like to establish a nationwide performance appraisal system for individual government officials. They really try to encourage, they really try to select, encourage, and motivate government officials for modernization of China's economy and social development. So next is after the 1979, there are a series of system and activities set up for improving system, for further perfecting the system and make the whole system more transparent, and in order to encourage political accountability. So here I list some key government and party decrees and regulations. Later on, I will briefly talk about the relationship between the government party, the ruling party. It is very unique for Chinese political system. In order to understand Chinese evaluation activities in China, the most important thing you need to understand is a very unique relationship between the government, the administrative system, and the party system. I will briefly talk about the relationship later. And here I list some very important government and party decrees and regulations. You can see that from the 1979, 1982, 1996, up to the 2009. I list all these important government regulation decrees. You can have a rough idea of what the evaluation activity in China roughly look like. So here I'm going to give from my perspective, from a public nutrition scholar perspective, how we look at the evaluation, government evaluation activities. And for our last for our previous presenter, something like evaluation in Bangladesh, and mainly means program evaluation, policy evaluation. But in China, the government evaluation activity, when we talk about evaluation, is a lot more comprehensive. When we talk about evaluation in China, in China's context, basically we talk about three systems. The first system, as I mentioned, actually the starting point of the China's evaluation activities, which is performance appraisal in government human resource management. Actually evaluate the individual government officials' performance. Of course, program evaluation is part of the evaluation, because in China, for the administrative system, the party and the government evaluate and manage the personnel selection and promotion and every year. So their performance is highly related to the programs they are managing. They manage. So that's part program evaluation could be part of the performance appraisal system. And also in China, there's another system, actually means organizational level performance management system. And this is for performance evaluation at organizational level. In China, there's a very famous system called target responsibility system. And actually, every year, the later on you introduce a Chinese political structure a bit. In every year, the higher level government actually set up, the central government set up the overall the government performance indicator. You can consider them as a set of KPIs. And at the provincial level government, they actually, according to the central government's design, they have their own KPI. And after that, they cascade the provincial level of provincial level government KPI down to the municipal level, and then down to the township level, even down to the civil village level. So this is the so-called organizational level performance management system, target responsible system. You can consider this as a KPI system. There are some social, political, and economic indicators, of course, in all those whatever programs you talk about, and they actually measure some key aspects of what the local government or what the local governments are doing. This is organizational level performance management system. And another system for Chinese government in China actually is related to evaluation activities, also related to the physical auditing activities. And in China, the program evaluation and the organizational level performance management system also are largely intertwined with the physical auditing system. And every year, and there are different level of government auditing offices. They actually check, they actually evaluate the local government and the agencies, their financial record, their accounting statements, and how they implement the budget, and actually to check, to ensure the authenticity, legality, and efficiency of the physical revenues and expenses, particularly in recent years, anti-corruption and improving administrative efficiencies are top priorities for the current administration led by Xi Jinping. And actually, this is when we talk about auditing, when we talk about evaluation activities in China, we actually talk about the three systems: performance appraisal for human resource management, the organizational level performance management system, and the physical auditing system. As I mentioned before, you can see that there are evolution of regulations and policies, and the Chinese government actually are very serious about implementing and enacting all those policies and the decrees, and trying to modernize the system, make it more transparent and politically accountable. Here, I'm going to quickly tell you a little bit about the structure, the system of China in order to understand how everything I just mentioned work. So in China, you need to understand that for China, why I think this part is important because we have many international participants. I'm happy to say I know little about your country, the political structure, the evaluation structure. I am sure for most of you, you may now understand China. So I quickly introduce the whole thing and give you an idea. And particularly, I want you to understand this very unique relationship between the ruling party and the administrative branch, the so-called the narrow definition of the government in China. And in China, actually, China has a unitary government structure. And basically means, for example, in the US, you have a federal system. Maybe in Philippines, you have a federal system, right? But in China, it's a unitary system. Basically means we have a central government. After that, we have a provinces government. We also have some autonomous regions under the direct administration by the central government. We also have municipalities. We have a special administrative regions. We also have some after the provinces, we have a municipality, we have a township. Actually, we have 5 levels of government. Why we call it a unitary government system? Actually, basically means the central government set everything. The central government set the targets and set the guidelines, and the central government actually make strategic planning, and all the lower level government actually follow the central government's guideline to achieve the central government's.
Professor Yu, I just want to remind you, you have got 2 more minutes.
Okay. So, and also the in China, we have legislative, executive, judicial branches, also have the audit office. In China, you really need to understand this dual management system of a party and the government. And the party management and the administrative management actually is seamlessly integrated. And no matter which system we are talking about, the performance system, personnel system, and auditing system, actually they are under this dual management system. The party play a very important role. The administrative also play a very important role. To some extent, the party actually has a supervision role for the administrative development. So later on we can discuss this, but anyway, I want to give you some ideas. For organizational performance management, after the we know that after the 1990s, internationally we have this so-called new public management movement. For currently for the performance management system in China, I mean for the organizational level, even for program evaluation, we adopted we are adopting the outcome-based performance management system, as I mentioned before, the KPIs, and we already began to to focus on the outcomes of government programs and the government, even the internal administrative operations. So let me conclude. Let me quickly conclude. In China, we already established the academic training system, professional training system. We will have a really large academic community focusing on the evaluation activities. We also have many academic journals. And one thing I want to highlight actually is the in the 2007 in China, we enacted a law called Open Government Information Law. And the Chinese government trying to open up the system, trying to make it more transparent with the political accountability. But my last point is I still have to say, all the system, all the activities I mentioned, mainly for internal government management, the NGOs and the third party evaluations are just emerging, and I hope with the later development. And the independence and the quality of the third party evaluation, I mean, evaluation from citizens, evaluation from the non-profit organizations, and would develop faster and better. That's my last point. All right. Yeah. Thank you for my thank you for giving me this opportunity. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That's it.
Thank you, Professor Yu. We will move to our next presenter, Professor Romeo Santos. Professor Romeo, in addition to his academic activities, also a board member and treasurer of the Asia Pacific Evaluation. Professor Romeo, mic is yours, and you have 15 minutes to present to us. Are you sharing your PowerPoint, or
Oh,
are we
yes, please
sharing?
allow me.
Good.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everyone. I'm going to present the NEPS of the Philippines, what it's been, and what lies ahead. What it has been and what lies ahead. And I'm going to start with this. Of course, you have the contents simply illustrated in the slide. I'd like to deal with the bit of history and background, why the NEPS, what it has been, the milestones, and reflections for what it is really, why it matters, and moving forwards could be scenarios, opportunities, risks, and challenges. First of all, I would like to deal with the topic a little deeper. We're talking about NEP, or National Evaluation Policy, especially, particularly the Philippines. About the background, why NEPS? I would like to acknowledge, of course, my source. There are many. And first of all, the principal ones, the book is the Institutionalization of National Evaluation Policy in the Asia Pacific by Stockmann et al. And also Demel et al. Kind of a study about the institutionalization of evaluation policy in Asia. And I found this definition, which is a key component to ensure that there's demand for evaluation, the results of evaluation, or evidence-based, and of course, the impact improve people's lives in the SDG. That's the thing written there. And we have the definition first of all of UNDP and UNICEF in 2019. It's kind of dealing with system. What is system? From policy to making a system, it should be actually cut into a system. There are sets of institutions, people's activities, along with policies, procedure, and everything, so that it's not a chaotic structure. There is a structure that could be operationalized, of course, of different levels of development. These are defined here in other statements below. But first of all, let's acknowledge this from UNDP and UNICEF. Now, I was surprised to see the presentation of Dr. Sharif from Bangladesh a while ago. It seems that Philippines and Bangladesh have a kind of parallel development in the evolution of evaluation. We are talking here of the evaluation in our times. Right? Well, of course, if we look back and find the root or the origin of evaluation, we could go to Egypt and perhaps China. They have their own evaluation. But what we are going to be talking here is the evaluation that we see now, where it is focused on results and basically results based in essence. And I could see here that from 2024, 2010, sorry, that's 2010, 2024. More than a decade, what have changed? What gains have been achieved by the Philippines in terms of its formation or development in M&E, or even the national evaluation policies? I found out that the situation is described as like this. There are conflicting views on the use of evaluation and its results, particularly in the Philippines. Well, we in the Philippines do not fret about that, because if you will see the whole world, actually, especially developing countries, we have the same situation actually. There are conflicting views on the use of evaluation and results, and the whole world actually almost, particularly in the developing countries, we have this kind of situation. Evaluation is commonly perceived as fact-checking, fault-finding tool, and I think it has changed a bit, but still there are many based on the experience. It's not for improvement of the program or interventions, such that when you approach an agency of the government and they come to know that you are an evaluator, there's some kind of people being adamant about letting evaluators get into their system. And it is widely acknowledged that government agencies do not have the capacity to conduct M&E and use evaluation results. You can gather this from many sources, actually, online and documents. I would like to deal with this timeline that I wrote and to give you an idea of what I have mentioned a while ago. We have in 2010 to 2024, you could go back to the slides of Dr. Sharif, and it seems that many countries are like this because, in 1985, there's a kind of trend in evaluation, results-based, which is the basic M&E type that we're using today, basic approach, has started that. And here in the Philippines, we have in 2007, we have the OPF, which is the Organizational Performance Indicators Framework, where you have the outputs, major final outputs, and leaning towards actually the consideration of the result. Now, how did the Philippines perform? And what is it today? And what lies ahead? Okay. If you are seeing the red boxes, you can see different memorandums or circular written or passed. And basically, it's from NEDA, National Evaluation, here, the National Economic Development Authority and the DBN, Budget Management. The principal agencies, the Philippines, that mainly deal with the development in M&E because these bodies are actually put in charge to deal with this. First of all, I would like to mention that the Philippines is a presidential form of government. We have three co-equal branches of government. We have the legislative, judiciary, and the executive, where we have the president. If you would notice, we have four administrations illustrated here. And from 2011, we have this NEDA and DBM Joint AO 2025. Later in the upcoming slides, you will know what this is. NEDA and DBM Joint Circular on NEP Framework in 2015. And you have the NEDA UNDP Strategic M&E Project 2017-2022 here. This represents the development of the National Evaluation Policy. I would like to mention in parallel to this, the institutionalization or establishment of different organizations. One is the PMES 2010. It's kind of a non-government organization or association that also promotes the M&E development in the country. And we have the M&E network in 2011, which is based in the government, the National Economic Development Authority. And we have the FILDEV, which I represent as being board member in APEA, which was established in 2012. I have a close affinity to these three because I was part of the foundation of these three actually. Now, APEA, if you look at the development in the regional, we have APEA, which I represent here. We have some international conferences that we highlight the value of evaluation. We started in 2016 in Hanoi, and in 2019 in Manila. We have 2022 a virtual conference, and 2023 only last year the APEA conference. And these are actually conferences, instruments in the propagation of M&E, raising the awareness of people. Now, I talk about judiciary and legislative branches of government. although there are circulars and projects within the executive department from here, these are executive department actions by the president and of course the secretaries, different departments. We have in the legislature the first bill raised in the Senate, originated in the Senate by the author in 2019 as part of the APIA conference. And after that, there was this bill again that supports the establishment of MNE in the Philippines. We are now here in 2024. What it has been and what is ahead. Now, even if you do not conduct a very rigorous evaluation, many would agree that there is an increase in MNE awareness in the Philippines, in governments, even in the civil society sector. And there are many sectors instrumental to this, UN agencies and government agencies that contribute to the promotion of MNE in the Philippines. But in the area of capacity, it's still a work in progress. We could say that there's rather a sluggish improvement in the MNE capacity on the individual level, institutional, even so, and the enabling environment for MNE is still a work in progress. Let me go into some details. I'm not talking here of the present perhaps, so it's within the scope of the administration that I mentioned. Evaluation practices mainly through our National Economic Development Authority. There's this point that no annual evaluation plan, no systematic approach of evaluative plan public programs, no evaluation guidelines, no ethic guidelines, no MNE. But these are works in progress, actually. The evaluations are conducted based on the guidance provided by NERA. And this may be changing to some level. But the Philippines, has a NEP framework being developed by NEDA and the DBA. And this is the first national parliament in Asia to host an international evaluation by APIA. There was this parliamentarian session held at the House of Philippine Senate, actually in the halls of the Philippine Senate during the second APIA conference, February 2019. Now, looking at other countries in the Asia Pacific region, there are some milestones that we could mention as well. Philippines and Sri Lanka have endorsed NEP in the Pacific region, only 2 countries. This may have changed after 2 years because my source was 2 years ago. Only Nepal has evaluated and integrated the country's constitution in the Asia Pacific region, so commendable is Nepal here. Sri Lanka is also commendable in such a way that it's the only country in South Asia to have national evaluation policy approved by the national government. We have Japan and Korea here, countries that have institutionalized and legalized the act of evaluation, the institution of evaluation. Now, a while ago, I mentioned about AO 25 in 2011, and in 2015, we had the joint memorandum. In AO 25 in 2011, this is about interagency task force on harmonization. Evaluation as essential component was emphasized. And in 2015, the establishment of the NEP framework for the Philippines Facilitator initiated through the help, of course, for UN agencies like UNDP, of course, and pioneered by UNICEF in the past, especially the establishment of, the MNE network. Now, in terms of legislative support, I mentioned about the bill. These are the details of the bill in 2019 by a member of the opposition, and followed shortly by a member of the majority, the ruling party, which actually authored by Senator I. Marcos, the sister of the current president. There are other initiatives along the legislative directions anyway, and I would like to show you this. Acknowledgement is given to Dr. Romulo Miral. In 2024, he used this in ODA workshop. You would notice that here in the Senate, because we have bicameral system, you know, we have the lower house and the upper house. Senate, the upper house, and the House of Representatives at the lower house, the Congress. So I mentioned a while ago about the SB 788, SB 1885. Whereas in parallel, there were these actions actually in the 18th Congress of the Philippines. Some congressmen were also leading actions toward the NEP. And in the 19th Congress, the same people, Ontiveros, and then joined by other senators, and still Amy Marcos. So that's the situation now in the legislative area or arena. Now, what it's for? Why NEP matters? Well,
Professor Romeo, I just wanted to remind you that you have 2 more minutes.
okay, 4 minutes. Evaluation is indispensable, but you know, in the current, it's never treated as a priority. There may come a time that it may be the priority. Not yet mandated by law because there are bills still waiting to be passed. I would like to go back to the evaluation definition. This is the definition that IOSCE and CEval partners have in 2016. Process and outcomes judging the value and merit of place. And look back at that NEP definition. Let's see. Word of policy, word of system for the net. What's the word of evaluation? This is the last slide, and you can see that I think I will be ending up with questions. In terms of MME capacity, well, institutional, individual, enabling environment are works in progress. Institutionally, not yet capacitated to the level that it can conduct its own. Individual, perhaps there are individuals who have progressed much, but which one should come first? Transformation of evaluation or transformation of society? If we are waiting for the enabling environment, which is the society is included, to transform evaluation, well, when would evaluation transform itself? So actually, it's kind of a quandary. Which one should come first? In terms of scenario, in terms of uptake of understanding of comprehension, right now evaluation is, you know, a little bit chaotic, I may say personally. There are different conflicting views, concepts, methods, so on and so forth. About buy-in meaning acceptance of the society, buy-in perhaps on a higher level already, but about professionalization in a sense that, you know, which it includes, you know, academic education, licensing perhaps. So there's that, you know, scenarios and opportunities that we are looking at. In terms of risks and challenges, there are multiplicity of themes and agendas compounding interest. Where does evaluation need to go right now? There are cross-cutting themes, for instance, but there are interest groups compounding interest. For instance, we have heard about, you know, complexity system, decolonization of evaluation. What else? Science thinking, and no goal, no plan trend among evaluators ourselves, and perhaps the thinking of people relying on evaluation as if it is kind of the only source of knowledge, which is a kind of a development of SINO. putting evaluation in a kind of pedestal that is as if evaluation is the one doing the result and not the interventions. There are so many things like these that you can see. And as years go on, we could see some shifting, some changes, some more challenges, but we would hope that we could have a good comprehension, a good acceptance, and a good system of evaluation in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Romeo Santos. So just quickly remind you that we are in the second webinar of the Asia Pacific Evaluation Landscape, and we just heard from our esteemed country presenter from Bangladesh, China, and the Philippines. I now want to invite Professor Dr. Wolfgang Mayer, Professor of Sociology in Saarland University in Germany and a board member of the International Program for Development Evaluation Training, to discuss the three presentations that we just saw. I'm also receiving questions, so I'm putting those questions in, and I might be taking some more questions, and I might be asking some of the participants to come and open their mic and ask question. Once this presentation is done, we will get into Q&A. Professor Wolfgang, mic is yours for the discussion. Are you sharing your presentation, or is someone sharing your presentation?
I'm doing that. Yes, thank you
Awesome.
very much.
Great.
So you should see my, yes, you should see my
We can
slides now.
see it. We can see it very well. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, to all the contributions we had. I will try to get a bit up time so we have enough time for discussion. So get roughly through these slides, which are done by Professor Stockmann, who has to apologize that he cannot be here today. So I jumped in, but let me, go through that. So it should move. Now I got a problem here. Let me see, here it is. Okay. So let me first, for those people who are not familiar with the GLOBE project, say a few words of what we have done. So we are collecting case studies which are written by national authors, and we have heard some of them today. And they should do some analysis of the literature, documents, statistic, whatever is available about evaluation and the national evaluation system. And they also made some interviews, whatever kind of material, and you already got an idea what kind of impressive results we can get out of that. We have got them pressed into a mandatory analysis grid because we want to compare the countries and all over the planet. Let's say that. Well, as you see here, Reinhard chose the Americas booklet, but we also have, of course, one of Asia we are talking about today. And there's another one about Europe available. And the last one about Africa is, well, just about to be finished. So we have the same mandatory analysis grid for all these countries. And it is really a rich and enriching broad variety. And we also try to offer a glossary of clarifying terms. I come to that in a minute. And we have some feedback loops to guarantee at least some kind of similarity for the comparison. So this is what we have done for guiding the process. So let's come to the three countries we are talking about. I do not want to get to these numbers, but there was already some things mentioned by the authors, which is very important. So first of all, if we come to the population size and of the economic strengths and of the historical point, China is outstanding. This is one of the oldest countries. It's one of the oldest cultures, for sure. It's also one of the biggest countries, and it is in one point also one of the economic important countries in the world. And as Professor Yu already said, well, there is a long tradition of something which might be called evaluation, which is Pingdu. Sorry for the wrong pronunciation. I never can get it behind these Chinese pronunciations, but Pingdu is something which is existing for a long time. And this is decoupled from all the worldwide development. And therefore, this is some specifics in China, especially if compared to Bangladesh and Philippines. These two countries are much more close to the, let's say, global development, as perfectly described, of evaluation. I really love that from Professor Santos to show these timelines, and exactly that's it. So evaluations in the global understanding somehow started in the 1980s, and the first WUPIs developed in the Anglo-Saxon world, particularly in Canada, and then US and South Africa, and of course also Australia. But the real thing started in the middle of the 1990s in Europe. Then a lot of countries joined in Europe, then later in Latin America, almost at that time. And the real takeoff was after the millennium. So there's a lot of things happening, and particularly in Asia. And Bangladesh and the Philippines are very much involved into these processes. So there's a lot of dynamics in it, and a lot of this shared understanding of evaluation from the, let's say, the global understanding of evaluation, which is derived from this Anglo-Saxon world towards the international organizations. So China is a bit away from that because they are following their own tradition. This is very interesting. So China is somehow including this global understanding of evaluation into their old, very traditional model of Pingdu, and this produces something which is really different. I think that's important to understand. And another point is about the political system. This is also very interesting. Well, we have, of course, the democratic system in the Philippines, and which has also some tradition nowadays. It's working more or less as all democratic systems. And we have Bangladesh, which also have a democratic systems, but with some, let's say, rumors during the last years. And now we have this tremendous change. So it is in a way much more unstable. And we have the stable China's one-party state governance with a very top-down governance structure. From the, let's say, European perspective, we always think China is something like a monolith bloc with a communistic party guiding everything. And I'm really thankful that Professor Yu made it quite clear that it is a bit more difficult and a bit more complex. And of course, it also has a lot of tradition in this kind of top-down governance structure. And this is also something we can see in this book. Compared to all other countries, China is somehow different because it's much more like this central governance structure. And this is not because of any kind of political dictatorship. It's something like a long-lasting tradition, and there is not such kind of a democratic development like in other countries, as we have that in Bangladesh, which is somehow influenced, of course, from the British culture, and of course also on the Philippines. So these are differences in the cultures where evaluation is coming in. I think that's very important to get that in mind, and it's already said. So let's come to our system. So we have, looking at the political system, we have two parts, which is about the institutionalization. It's quite, let's say, easy to look at in a way, but difficult to evaluate that. So it's about, are there any national laws and policies about evaluation? Are there any national decrees? What kind of organizations? Do you have some kind of like a ministry for planning and monitoring evaluation is part of that, or is it institutionalized in another way? And then, of course, as mentioned in the Chinese case, there is also a role of the audit office, which is sometimes in the lead of developing monitoring evaluation in countries. And on the other side, of course, we have to look at the use of evaluation. Who is really ordering evaluation? So we have, of course, the parliament, we have some sectoral ministries and whatever. So if we look at that and compare it together, then there would be a simple idea that there should be a linear thing. The more institutionalized, the more evaluation use. And the final result is no, it does not work like that. Not only in Asia, but also in the other countries and regions. But looking at our 3 countries, we can see that there's a differentiation between China, Bangladesh, and Philippines. On one hand side, on the institutionalization. So we find more institutions, more laws and whatever in China and Bangladesh, and almost nothing in the Philippines. And on the other hand, we have, if it comes to use, there's also really poor use of evaluation as an instrument in the political system in China and Philippines, but there's something in Bangladesh. So this is very interesting, a very interesting difference. It has nothing to do with the political system, and probably also not to do so much with the culture and the traditions. So I will skip that because I already said that. And if we look at the social system, it was another one. So the civil society, and there we have a very general picture. The civil society is almost nowhere a really important driving force for evaluation. And this is the same here. So we do not have really encouraged civil societies which want to make evaluation as a control instrument, for example, for the government. This is, from my point of view, very much surprising in Bangladesh, because I know that there are strong civil society organizations in this country. But if it's coming to evaluation, it almost have no important effect for the development. Well, this was the result. And finally, let's come to the professionalization part. Well, in general, Asia is lagging behind compared to, of course, Europe and US, but also behind Latin America or Africa. But it's catching up very quickly. But coming to the 3 countries here, we almost do not have any kind of academic institutions. So there are a lot of universities, no doubt. I never try to count them in China, and it's the same in Bangladesh. But almost no university programs are existing to teach evaluation. And well, there are some journals in China. Yes, that's also very interesting. And there is some discussion. Well, we put here particularly the Higher Education Development Journal. So there's a lot of things which I know. That's my personal perspective on China. It's on higher education and university. And there's a lot of developing evaluation instruments and discussing that. So particularly it is, yes, but it's not linked to some chairs, for example, as far as I know. Maybe, Professor, you can correct that in a way. And we do not have any standards, but this might be coming to the point that the standards, well, this is also what we have to get as a lesson at the moment in Africa, but maybe the APRES standards are taking this kind of lead for standards. In Africa, it is exactly that. The APRES standards are in lead. So let me come to this final conclusion, and I will end here. So if we look at Bangladesh, we see that evaluations are done, yes, but if they are done, they are often focusing on accountability. There seems to be a lack of coordination within this executive branch. There's, of course, low professionality, and academic importance is also very low in the country. If we look in China, yes, it is more an instrument of control and of audit and performance management. This was perfectly explained by Professor Wu. It is probably seen sometimes as a personal threat, but it is not an instrument for learning in this classical thing as we think evaluation should be. And there is a low use of evaluation as a standard instrument for developing the policies and developing the country. That's also interesting. It is more used to control, in a way, the performance. Yeah, there's as far as we know, no evaluation association. So the linkages from China towards the global development is still very poor. And finally, to end up with this, in the Philippines, there is no basic in a way of mandated by any kinds of laws. So you should do evaluations, and it should be institutionalized, but much better in the public sector and in the management cycle. But in a way, yes, there are some evaluations done, but there is no priority to use these evaluation parts. So Philippines are still on a very low level, starting at using evaluation. But saying this means there's also a lot of dynamics, as we have seen in these three contributions. So I want to stop here to give us enough time for discussion. Thank you for listening to me and my thoughts. So there might be others coming now. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mayer. We have, so I want to once again thank all the speakers and Professor Wolfgang, who discussed all the three cases. I think we are going to take a group photo at this stage. What I would request everyone, the participants, to turn on your cameras and show us your best smiles, so we can take a photo and then post it on social media so we can find each other, you know, when we go away from the webinar. So Randy, Kab, I will, when you're ready.
Ahmed, are you ready?
Yes, yes, I will take a picture. Okay, please open camera for everyone and smile. We have 2 pages. Okay, this page 1. And page 2. Okay, thank you everyone.
Mohib, you're muted.
Thank you, everyone. Sorry for, okay. This was a great photo. I can see all the smiles, so that was very good. We will move to a summary and then, okay, so we will do now the Q&A session. What I'm thinking, what the best way probably would be to call on some of the participants who have already sent some photos. My suggestion would be, and my request would be, if you could please keep your question to 30 seconds to 45 seconds, and then I will, if it's a country-related question, then I will ask the country presenter to give you an answer, and I would hope that answer would be limited to 2 minutes. So Roba, you had a question for Bangladesh, and please limit it to 1 question. So can you please come in, open your mic, and ask the question related to the impact of international institution in Bangladesh. Roba, the mic is yours if you're.
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Roba Morgan from Mauritius. Actually, I'm a former permanent secretary. I just retired from the service. My question would be, because from your presentation, you had the assistance of international organizations. So was it part of a country strategy, or was it a request from you, or was it something which has been arranged by external parties? Thank you.
Thank you very much for keeping that question short. Dr. Sharif, the mic is yours.
Yeah, basically what happens when we actually talk about international assistance, from the very beginning, since the independence in 1971, Bangladesh has been relying on, foreign aid and foreign support, foreign assistance, whatever you call, and where international development agencies were instrumental in providing those support to Bangladesh. So all the project money that used to come to Bangladesh in those days had to be, monitored. Their spending as well as utilization, whatever you call it, had to be monitored properly. So there was a guideline given by IDAs, International Development Agencies at that time, that how to actually monitor and evaluate those projects. So that probably was the beginning of that particular relationship between Bangladesh and international development agencies. Later on, when Bangladesh moved towards its own centrally controlled evaluation process through implementation and monitoring and evaluation unit, and they actually started relying less on international development agencies and maintaining some sort of evaluation process that is in-country evaluation process at the moment. I hope I was clear on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I have one question for China. Dr. Sylvia, you asked a question on China related to accountability and learning and improvement. If you are still with us, can you please open your mic and ask the question?
Hello, I'm still here. Yes. This is a question for Professor Yu. I'm curious to know, because the evaluation activities in China seem to be accountability driven. How does learning factor into these activities to drive improvement?
All right, very good question. First, you are saying it is accountability driven, but I have to say, in China, the government performance, individual performance, the performance appraisal system, actually they have two purposes. The first purpose is actually after 1979, and China actually is in an era of reform and open up. So the first drive, the first purpose actually is to promote economic and social development. So you can see the stunning, some scholars actually attribute the stunning economic development of China in the past 40 years to the personal or governmental appraisal system. And that actually is, if you ask me to see which portion of the contributions the performance appraisal system would contribute to, I would say the majority of a portion of the contribution of the performance appraisal system is for promoting economic and social development. Some economists, some scholars actually saying why China has such stunning economic development. As a professor shown the last, actually in the several minutes, for example, if you look at the GDP per capita, you look at the Human Development Index, China actually over the past 30 or 40 years, China right now has been doing a good job. And one of the reasons some scholars said, my personally also think so, is because of the performance evaluation system for China, because China set a quite strict and strict KPI for economic special social movement for Chinese government. In terms of the political accountability, I think there are two parts. China is a party-state system. One accountability is the government official need to hold accountable to the party, the ruling party. Actually, in China, the ruling party actually is representing the people's interests. And another political accountability actually is for the public, for the government. I'm sorry, for the people. Recently, particularly after the Xi Jinping's administration, Xi Jinping actually set a very rigid anti-corruption campaign standards. Right now in China, the performance evaluation, actually, we have the so-called one vote veto system. Basically means if you have some problem for some wrongdoings or whatever unethical behavior for government officials. For example, you have marriage affairs, you have affairs with whatever people outside your marriage. actually the government, the party could punish you even you are doing really well for the economic development. That's part of a political accountability because traditionally in China, and we consider the individual personal ethic as a part of very important quality or very important performance of government officials. I think in Singapore it's the same. So in Singapore, if you're a PP member, no matter how well you have served the community, as long as you have some individual personal ethic problem, you will be punished. You'll be driven out. That's my answer to your question. Yeah, I think as a professor mentioned that it's also related to the culture with the tradition. It's a very complicated issue. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Yu. For Philippine, I have two questions and I want to combine them, Professor Romeo, and that's why I am asking. There is two questions related to Manila the declaration. One is how will it ever be incorporated to country level systems and policies related to evaluation? Given it happened in Manila, that's why probably the question was directed at you.
Well, I hope so in the very near future. I keep saying it's still a work in progress. You know, there's a backup from the political sector, even senators and so on. But you know, political dynamics is very hard to understand. There are so many factors, you know, depending on the interest and inclination of the political party. And I hope we are, going towards that direction in the very near future, so that that declaration would have a reality.
Thank you, Professor Romeo. There is one more. We will take one last question. Roba, you had a question related to the questionnaires. If you want to come and ask that question from Professor Wolfgang, happy for you to come in, or I can ask the question. Okay, so Professor Wolfgang, the one question is, will you be able to share the questions of the interview that used to assess institutionalization of evaluation in a country? I think that's a very simple yes or, no question. And happy for you to pick if you wanted to answer it. But there's another question. I think you talked about the evaluation use, and you did mention a few things that doesn't explain the differences across countries in how use is determined. Can you also tell us a little bit about what are other factors that sort of, improve use in different countries? So over to you, Professor Wolfgang.
Okay, yes, the first question is very simple. The questionnaire is published in the form as it was used in Asia, in the Asian Pacific book. There you can find it from page 44 onwards. So it's quite easy to have a look there, so you find all the questions. There are, of course, some slight differences between the questions asked in Asia to the one in the other regions, but in general, we keep that as comparable as possible. So yes, it is published, and it is therefore easy to get to that. So the other question is much more difficult to answer. So I understand the question is more about what causes the differences in use. And this is a very, very, very interesting question. On one hand side, let's start with that. We have some kind of let's say tradition. As in the example of China, there's a long tracing tradition, and this somehow formed how evaluation is used, and it is more used in an economic sense in China. But in other countries, of starting, let's say, let's take the US. So the roots are somehow starting in the Second World War, where some first what we would call nowadays evaluations are done, and these are coming firstly from the psychologically damages of soldiers from the Second World War, and then it's moving over to education. So you have also a long-lasting tradition, not as long as the one in China, but this is how evaluation developed in the United States of America, and it is still formed by the disciplines of psychology and education, and a little bit later all the public services are coming in. So you have something like that, and evaluation is used in these particular fields. You have a lot of examples also in my country, in Germany. But then there's another race, and we have that in Bangladesh and in the Philippines. So there are a lot of activities from international corporations in some countries for development cooperation, and particular the World Bank and also the Asian Development Bank, and also some bilateral partners like, let's say, the German GIZ or USAID. They really invited somehow the evaluation towards the country. And a lot of activities were done also for developing evaluation in these countries by these international actors. These are also important players to use evaluation first for their own demand, and then also developing it towards a national system of evaluation. In Europe, for example, it is much stronger. The European Union has a quite simple rule. If you want to get money from the European Union, you have to evaluate the impact. Full stop. And therefore, all the European countries have to develop some kind of a system of evaluating these contributions from the European Union, and they all want to have money from that. This is also a strong driver of the use of evaluation. So the answer is yes, there are several, let's say, several causes by this use. It's sometimes in the fields, and this is also getting international. In development cooperation, it is like that, or also in education. It is development from upside down, from the international organizations, which really try to help countries to develop such kind of systems. And there might be also some national drivers from national culture, as we see in China. So these are the drivers to use evaluation, and therefore the use of evaluation is really different. There's a broad variety from the one that Professor Yu described in China to some really, let's say, strong linkages to the international understanding of evaluation and this kind of standardized use of evaluation in programs and projects. I hope that answered the question.
Absolutely did. And this is a very interesting conversation. I hope one day we will be able to bring this panel or a panel specifically to talk about utilization in these national systems. Thank you to all our presenter and discussants. This has been a great informative session. We will now go to our next presenter, Ms. Sevengeril Amagalan. She is the member of the NEPS team, and she will give us a summary and some closing remarks. I just want to remind everyone who is here that I have a few very good announcements at the back of this presentation. It will take only 1 minute to present all of them to you in 1 or 2 slides. So stay with us to sort of hear about what is happening across Asia Pacific in the evaluation and what might be some of the things you can consider for your own sort of participation and all that. Gerald, mic is yours.
Yes, thank you, Muhib, and thank you all the speakers and organizers of the API series of the webinar. The Asian Pacific Evaluation webinar series discuss how evaluation is used in Bangladesh, China, and Philippines. Each country has a different level of institutionalization and use of the evaluation. For example, Bangladesh has a moderate institutionalization and use, while China low use despite similar institutionalization. The Philippines has low use in both areas. Evolution in Bangladesh has rich historical background and has shaped its current institutional framework. The legal and policy framework plays the crucial role in shaping the evolution process in the country, that despite challenges included limited resource and also the resistance of some political entities, international support and influence have helped to strengthen evaluation practice in Bangladesh. Evaluation activities in China have evolved over time, with performance appraisals playing a significant role in motivating civil servants. The government has worked on increasing transparency in evaluation activities, although internal results remain confidential. Third-party evaluation by the non-government entities have emerged to access government performance, but independence and quality need improvements by enhanced transparency. Regarding for the Philippine NEPS, Philippines has made significant progress in evaluation, but challenges remain. Efforts are underway to establish a national evaluation policy with legislative backing, emphasizing the importance of the evaluation for the evidence-based decision-making. The country aims to advance in the SDG era and improve people's lives. As a closing remark, is the key insights, the level of the institutionalization of the evaluation impact use in the countries like Bangladesh, China, and Philippines. Evaluation is often seen as an instrument of the control rather than the tool improvement these nations. The political system plays a significant role in determining demand and topics of the evaluation in these countries. Civil society organizations have low participation in evaluation and to drive the use of the evaluation results. For the broader Asian Pacific region, there is a crucial need to elevate the role of the evaluation, especially in countries where use remains low despite the institutional frameworks. A focus increasing the professionalization of evaluation and encouraging civil society participation will ensure that evaluation becomes a more integral part of the policy making process. As these countries continue to develop their evaluation systems, and they can look at best practice within the region and globally guide their efforts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gerald, for that excellent summary, and thanks for sticking with the time. So there is a call for papers out for the Asia Pacific Journal of Evaluation that the APIA, the Asia Pacific Evaluation Association official journal. There's a number of different themes. We also have Manila Declaration, and we want all of you to please sign this, pass it on to other colleagues in the evaluation to sign this so that we can sort of, push this momentum and get the sort of national evaluation policies in many countries signed. Next slide, please. So there is an academic symposium on M&E education in beautiful Colombo in Sri Lanka. It's from December 2 to December 4. There's a number of other organizations that are, APIA is sort of running this, but there's a number of other organizations, Center for Evaluation, University of Sri Jayawardena, I think that's sort of where this is happening. So you can yourself, if you're interested, and if you pass it on to other people who might be interested to participate. Next slide, please. We're also running the regional dialogue and a number of other things that are happening from November 26 to December 4, including that academic symposium. So if you are in Colombo, you will be able to get across all of these things. There is the regional dialogue that's online. We will be running that on the 26th of November from 10 a.m. Indian Standard Time. It's a half-day sort of event. And then there is a number of other events. So some are in person, some are online. You can go to APIA's website and find more evaluation, our social media sites, and find more evaluation. And all of those who are interested will, I think, greatly enjoy and benefit from the knowledge sharing and the great presentations that will happen. Next slide, please. Finally, keeps in touch with the Asia Pacific Evaluation. We are on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, across many sort of Instagram. And also our website is asiapacificeval.org. If you want to reach out and contact us for something, or if you have a question or want to propose something or have a great idea that we want to have a look at, then apiacoordinator@gmail.com is also there. I want to thank our presenter, our discussant, all the participants for their keen participation in this second webinar. We will be putting another webinar, hopefully, and the sort of announcement and everything for that will come out. Thank you very much, everyone, and we will end the recording will be available, and you should be able to access the recording as well. Thank you, everyone, and keep in touch.
Thank you. Bye.